True. Let's go to Karma Green, we steady on the rise. Digging truth from ancient scenes, we open blinded eyes. Rhyme sharp like pirates' lines, we break the bondage tight. Kamji speaking revolution, keep the fire burning. Chill drums guide our stride, we march with purpose proud. No more silence, we collide, our voices thunder loud. Politics and history, we stitch them in every verse. From Pharaoh's throne to Yaoundé streets, we claim the Kamji verse.
One of the areas of the threats of Trump's invasion that many people are looking at is the Cameroon factor. See, Biya, who just won his 8th straight victory at the age of 92, has created a lot of tumultuous energy in the region. And many people have been looking at the situation of Cameroon, looking at the fact that it's the origin of the Central African franc and the franc system in general, with La Guerre Cachée, or the hidden war of France against the largely Bamileke-led UPC. And they've been looking at this fact and the idea that a U.S. invasion of Nigeria could actually help the Westerners establish peace in the region. Now, in the current state, there is a faction of the military of Cameroon that supports Chiroma, and then there is the other faction that is supporting the RDPC regime, the CPDM in English, the Biya Mafia. They support that side. So you do have fissures and fractures in the region, right? Some individuals, more miscreants, they've been speaking about Ambazonia, the so-called English-speaking side of the grass fields, and the idea that Ambazonia may want to push for secessionism. And many of the miscreants, the Langleyeites, within the United States, a lot of these so-called, cocaine importation agency advocates have been speaking about secessionism, trying to partition Cameroon into smaller microstates, and they are speaking against Biya. They are speaking in favor of an invasion of the region, right? They want to partition these states for the some of their financial syndicates, right, and defense contractor syndicates can shore up support and combat what they see as the unfair Africa Corps, which was once Wagner operation in the region. So another angle of the invasion threats against Nigeria by Trump are the fact that the West needs to basically reestablish security in Cameroon because it's been really, really hot recently. And I've long predicted that a palace coup, the same thing that happened with Nguema in Gabon, is the most likely scenario for the North Atlantic states. And the idea that, if they put somebody in the military to take control of the country, and then 18 to 24 months later, they pull a switcheroo and then that person becomes a civilian ruler, that would be the easiest way, right, to be able to establish victory. But the alliance that Biya has is a very, very special alliance with China, with Russia, with Israel, the UK, France as partners, right? This is very, very, very difficult and unlikely because the RDPC regime has so much support. However, if any of the aforementioned nations wanted to pull a switcheroo, they easily could. But even beyond that, the United States has to make sure that they have, beyond, the SOCOM and the secret, AFRICOM presence, a, military boots on the ground in order to be able to establish, their agenda and their narrative in the region. Because really it's the extraction of timber, oil, there's a lot of tea in Cameroon, the coastal, markets, the fact that China has a naval base in Kribi, and this has been used to traffic commodities secretly on the behalf of the Ruskies and the Chinese across the planet. The United States wants to establish more victories on the African continent, and their typical alliances that they have with Ghana is not sufficing. The AES is standing strong, and a lot of their covert movements with respect to these financed terrorists, many of them by the Gulf states, some of them by the intricate, sophisticated smuggling channels established by many of the Western states. That's not enough to be able to establish their protocols. So the boots on the ground as a way of stopping Christian genocide is one of the typical standard types of tactics that they're using. And to me, I don't think it's going to work this time. I don't think that they'll be able to get enough support, from the Nigerians on the ground. There are many, many different nations like China who have started to speak out against this because China wants to be able to maintain their economic relationships in the region, and the U.S. invasion would definitely quell that. So they've spoken out in favor of the Nigerian government. And you just have a lot of different entities around the world, BRICS nations, coming together opposing this idea that the United States needs to invade. So this is a really, really important issue. What happens with respect to Chad, Niger, right? And whether or not Cameroon becomes a powder keg, whether or not, it's going to be a peaceful transition within the next few months. I don't necessarily think that that's the case, but, all is left to be seen. Personally, I have the impression that, BIA won't last very long. It'll be a few months before someone does something and pulls a coup, but how that happens, is yet to be known. So that's all I got for y'all on this. Hope to catch y'all on the next one. Peace.
Let's go to Karma Green, we steady on the rise. Digging truth from ancient scenes, we open blinded eyes. Rhyme sharp like pirate lines, we break the bondage tight. Kamji speaking revolution, keep the fire burning. Shield drums guide our stride, we march with purpose proud. No more silence, we collide, our voices thunder loud. Politics and history, we stitch them in every verse. From Pharaoh's throne to Yaoundé streets, we claim the Kamji verse.